Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Sales. I'm Ryan Woodard.
And I'm Ashleigh Early.
And today we are super excited to bring Roderick Jefferson to our show today. Roderick is the VP of Global Enablement at Netskope and is the author of an Amazon bestseller, Sales Enablement 3.0. Welcome, Roderick.
My absolute honor. I can't wait to jump into this with you.
We're super excited again to have you here. Man, we can just kick it off and get right into this. I kind of feel like maybe Sales Enablement 3.0 is a good place to start. What kind of prompted you to really kind of dive into sales enablement and kind of make this a passion for you?
Well, I'll say this, similar to most people in sales enablement and even a lot in sales, I did not go to school or university to major in sales. Let's start there. I was a radio and television broadcast major and thought that I was going to be on the anchor desk at ESPN right now. Clearly, that did not happen. So the pivot was to sales. I actually started out years ago as a BDR in telco at AT&T and absolutely loved it. Did really well, got promoted to AE, went to President's Club a couple of times, and then realized I liked selling, but I didn't love it. But what I loved was the process of selling. So what I did was I went to my VP and said, what if I could take my rudimentary templates and tools and spread those across the entire region and get people more productive faster, hit quota more consistently, and get more people to President's Club? Well, as you can imagine, the answer was, well, then you've got a new job. So we crafted a whole new job. And the reason I did it was honestly, like a lot of folks in sales, I love the process of it. I wasn't crazy about the quota hanging over my head, right? I also like knowing what my check was going to be consistently. And so once I did that, I was able to move into training and look at this with a level of credibility because I'd been there and done it before. So it wasn't the theorist, it was a true practitioner. And then secondly, I could help them kind of get over those hurdles because I'd walked in those shoes. And I think that's the great thing about enablement is that we can say that we've walked in your shoes. Look, I've had bluebirds land, I've taken down whales, and I've lost at the 13th hour, just like you. I've been sitting and waiting for a DocuSign just like you and counting down the clock and making those calls and sending those texts. We all have to go through that. So the folks that are doing it, don't feel like you're alone because you're not. You've got a whole tribe of us that are doing this. But the best part is we're all still learning from each other. And as long as you're open to growing, you will continue to learn in your career.
That is so true. It's so important. I feel like people don't say that enough. And it's this weird, and I think especially if you're at a big company like AT&T, or if you're a member of a team with any more than I think about 10 people, it's really easy if you're new to sales to think, oh, I've got to keep it in the family. And that's something I've been doing a lot of work with lately is no, you don't. You can go, there is a whole world of perspectives and support out there. You just have to reach out and grab it. That was one of the biggest things I tell about people early in my career. I didn't start going to networking events and stuff like that. I went to networking events to sell. I didn't go to sales networking events because I thought, oh, well, I have to keep it in the family basically. And the moment I started doing that, the career exploded. My gamemanship got up, just everything gets, and it's healthier. It's such a healthier way to sell.
Networking inherently is about learning about the other person. It has nothing to do with me telling you about me or my products or my services or my solutions. The philosophy that I've adopted is this: stop selling and start helping. Yep. And what I mean by that is we're all salespeople in some capacity. Look, I was a consultant for 3 years. I know what it's like. I've carried a bag. I know what it's like. But if I can come in and say, I can help you, you tell me your pain, I can help you with a diagnosis and a solution for that pain. The solution may be Advil. It may be Vicodin. It may be an extraction or an amputation to stop the bleeding. But now inherently, I'm learning about you so that I can help you. And through that, we'll have a conversation versus I can give you a presentation so that I can sell something to you. No one likes being sold to. That's why all of us stay away from car dealerships. That's why you can find anything you need on Amazon right now, because no one wants to be sold to. So to the sellers out there, I'm going to give you 2 words: stop selling. 2 more words: start helping. It's as simple as that. How can I say that? Because this is what I do. For those that don't understand what enablement is, it's literally about getting you all the tools, the processes, the programs, the platforms to make you bigger, faster, and stronger. Now, when I said I didn't want a quota, I have a quota. My quota is every salesperson in my company. And it's how do we ensure that we're accelerating speed to revenue. We're also improving productivity per head. And finally, we're creating customers for life. That means tying the front of the house of sales together with the back of the house with customer experience or customer success, whatever you may call it. And it ultimately starts at the highest level, at the buyer's journey. Because right now I see a lot of companies trying to shoehorn, and a lot of sellers trying to shoehorn their buyers into your sales process, your sales methodology, your sales stages, and most important, my monthly and my quarterly quota. Don't think they don't know what you're doing. We're all very clear on what's happening. And if you do it from a perspective of I'm helping you, and get away from the word fair. Fair stopped when mom used to parse out M&Ms one by one. Those days are gone. Let's talk about mutually equitable now. Because frankly, if it's not mutually equitable, your customer does not give a damn about what you sell. And to that point around selling, don't sell products, don't sell solutions, and don't sell platforms. If you're gonna sell anything, there's one thing you should be selling: the experience that a prospect or a customer can only get by partnering with your company.
Man, that resonates profoundly. I mean, that's one thing that I've been blessed with to come to the company I work for, Edify, is like, that's what we kind of embody and the approach that we've taken. What do you think is like why some of these, I guess, older, less consultative approaches to sales and more like what I would call maybe like deceitful tactics in sales still persist? Like
the
what?
Glengarry Glenross sort of school of thought.
This is why there's always a stench on the word sales. And I am on a mission to remove that stench and put some kind of air freshener on it. To answer your question, Ryan, it's this. One, it's old school sellers that are stuck in the mindset of this is the way we've always done it, and they have not matured their game. Two, it's getting sellers out in the field before they are properly prepared, so we're sending them out to war with a plastic spoon. Three, it's because what's important to my manager is imperative to me. If I see that my old school manager does it this way, and my goal is to sit in their seat one day, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna do the same thing that I see them do, and you have this same repetition. I'm a glass breaker. And what I mean by that is stop doing things the way you've always done it and start getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. The world's different. You can't sell like you sold before. Let's be honest. Similar to right now, selling has never been more personalized than it is today. We're inviting each other into our homes. The gardener's outside making noise. The kids are screaming. The dogs are barking. Before, we would have tried to shut that down. There it is, adorable pup. We would have shut that down. But now we're like, you know what? That's part of the sales cycle. Before, I could take you out for cocktails. We can go out and play golf. We can go hang out and get to know each other and build rapport. There has never been a time like today where relationships based upon empathy and understanding and qualitative conversation has mattered more than it does right now. You can't look back and go, oh, you went to University of Texas. Guess what? That's my favorite team. My cousin went there. That and $7 will get you a latte. They don't care.
Yeah.
What can you do to diagnose my pain? What can you do to give me a solution for that pain? And then what can you do to follow through to make me look like a rock star? And here's the fourth one, is because during discovery and qualifications, we all ask about the company's success and where is this going to lead to and what does success look like and what are your ultimate goals? You realize that most people leave out the most important question to ask during discovery and qualification? Here's that question. So Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, what will you partnering with us successfully mean for you? Will it get you a promotion? Will it get you a bigger seat at the table? Will it get you out of the doghouse? Let me make you look like a rock star, but help me help you to look like a rock star.
I love
Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. I think when you bringing up kind of a moment that I had recently where I did the exact thing you're talking about, where I tried to help a client and basically based on what he was telling me, we weren't the best fit. So I recommended a competitor, which if at the time my sales leader would have known that, he probably would have tried to reprimand me.
Yeah, but Ryan, isn't there a time to call in and a time to call out? Let's be honest.
Bingo.
Exactly. I mean, you
Everything
have to be
is
smart
not for
about
everybody.
Exactly. And so I was like,
and if you
based
don't
on
get that sale now, you know what you just did? You planted in his mind that you cared about him as a human, and let's be honest, your prospects are going to tell everybody they know if you're horrible, but they're also going to tell everybody they know when you're human and you're real and you're helpful.
Yep. And I told him specifically, I said, and I don't really remember telling him this, but he messaged me and told me that I told him this, that he would outgrow his current platform in like a year and a half. And so he messaged me, it was like, hey, I see you're no longer selling MarTech solutions, but I remember you told me I'd probably outgrow the platform I'm on now in about a year. I'm actually there now that you're not with, selling MarTech. Curious for your honest opinion on what you were selling. Were you just collecting a check, or were you really passionate about the product? And I was, told him like, yeah, the product was actually really badass. And I've got some good salespeople there. So now, even though I'm not an SDR there anymore, I'm booking meetings for my old company just based on those networking opportunities. And so that's, it comes full circle. It's not just like
modern selling. I feel like it's all abundance mindset and long-term thinking. If you have the abundance mindset, it's like then you're free, you're free to call out things that aren't a great fit. You're free to add value, even when it's not directly going to hit your bottom line and your quota right now, but it pays off in the long run. Every time. I've got, no joke, I had a CISO of a major bank in the US reach out to me about a year ago. I stopped selling cyber about almost 4 years ago now. And I talked to this guy almost 10 years ago. And he remembered me as a BDR because of my dorky Star Trek jokes.
By the way, CISOs never update their contact info.
No.
You know that, right?
So
he thinks you're still there 4 years ago.
Oh, no, he knows. Yeah, he reached out and he was like, hey, I see you're no longer there. And you've actually had like 6 jobs since then. But I mean, that it's interesting too, because that also brings up another thing, which I'm curious, Roderick, especially since you're in enablement, we're seeing the average tenure of sales reps plummeting for a multitude of reasons. Yeah. I think one of the biggest ones, especially in the tech world, are just company dynamics have been so inconsistent.
And bad leaders and bad managers, not leaders, but bad managers. People don't leave companies, they leave managers.
Could not agree more.
And to your point, Ashleigh, I've read an article, I can't remember if it was New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, but sales jobs are in higher demand than they have ever been. They're paying better than they've ever been, but they also have the least amount of applicants. So there's a huge disconnect somewhere. And I feel like Roderick is kind of addressing some of that disconnect with Sales Enablement 3.0.
I think the number one disconnect is relationships have always been the backbone of success. We're not teaching, especially BDRs, and I'm going to say a broad statement. Most BDRs are not taught how to build relationships.
Yep.
They're taught how to sell, right? And there has never been a time in the history of the world where leading with humanity, empathy, and EQ has meant more than today. I gave a whole chapter to that in my book on how to lead with empathy, how to lead with humanity, and why EQ, emotional quotient, for those that don't know, is so important. And why is it such a big buzzword right now? You know why? Because it's human. I'll go back to what I said earlier. Selling has never been more personal. And if you don't know how to help personally, you'll close no sales. Because people will shut you down. I read that 70% of the buying journey is already done before they reach out to a salesperson, just because the amount of information that's available today out in the internet. I also read that 30% of customers said, if I never have to talk to a salesperson, I wouldn't. Think about that. They don't want to talk to you. They don't trust you. They don't believe that you want to help them. They think you're only trying to sell to them. Why would they work with you? It's simple. Go back to relationships and go back to helping and stop trying to sell. And that disconnect instantly will connect the dots for you.
Well, that comes back to something else I'm hearing a lot of people about. And I've seen a few of these posts lately on LinkedIn, and I try and jump in occasionally, but I get drowned out. Salespeople who come on and say, oh God, I'm so frustrated. Why do people keep ghosting me? And I always come back to like, they're ghosting you because they don't understand, because you're not human. You haven't made yourself
value.
Human. Yep.
You bring no human value. I'll say this, the 2 words that I hate most on the planet is human capital, because capital is expendable and replaceable. We're not capital.
No.
But if you're human, you step out of that capital box and you really become someone. The old words trusted advisor gets thrown around and it's so passe now. I don't think you need to be a trusted advisor anymore. think what you have to be is human.
For sure. I agree 100% with that. One of my newest BDRs, I've like really been pushing the be yourself, be creative. And now she's like actually recording videos using her skill as a singer, because she actually sings in a couple different bands locally. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, yeah, like bring out that character, do that stuff. Like that will separate you from bad, B2B outreach. So this is
you hit on something, Ryan. Video. I gotta stop the train for a second.
Yeah.
There are so many people, especially younger BDRs, and even the old grizzly sales folks, that this is the way we've always done it, that are terrified by video. Why? Because
TikTok video,
because they can't yeah, but that's especially if you have to show personality, because they can't sell in those videos. What they're selling is their personality, and sometimes people allow what I do to overcome who I am.
Yes.
And you lose that piece. Who you are is why I want to partner with you. What you do is why you're trying to sell to me.
That's huge. That is, man.
And it's so easy, especially in sales. And I've worked with a lot of people on video recently too, helping get people get more comfortable, because it is such a powerful tool to create those connections across distances. Because you get the facial, you get the random doggos that come out of your lap, like little Jack in the Boxes and stuff like that. You get all these fun little things. But a lot of people too, when you're on the phone, when you're doing presentations and stuff, it's easy if you rely on the company and the product to compartmentalize the rejection and go, oh, well, they're rejecting the company, they're not rejecting me. Video feels inherently personal, which makes it scary for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah.
And
but once you get comfortable with it, it's the most powerful tool in the world.
Exactly. It's one of those things where it's a mental block, but once you can get over it, and a lot of it, again, it comes back to, I think, and tell me if you agree, but for me, it comes back to that abundance mindset.
Yeah. I'll take it further than that.
Like
it comes back to a servant leadership mindset. Okay. Because I'm doing this to help you, or to clarify for you, or to answer a question deeper that you asked me. This is not about me. This is literally about you.
Exactly. So getting over that and just trying the video and going at it from that servant perspective, I've literally seen it, and I hate throwing out numbers like this, because then it's like, look, this is a very specific situation, but I have seen multiple examples where it's doubled and tripled replies. Like they go from getting one, your classic 100 dials, 5 conversations, 1 meeting, to 5 videos and 3 replies.
When I get emails, if I don't know you, I generally won't read it, or I'll delete it. I'm honest, right? I've got God knows how many emails per day. If I get a video, at least you've now intrigued me, because you've taken enough time to separate and differentiate yourself. So I'm going to look at the video, right? And then I'll write you back and say, not interested at this time, but love the video. And sometimes that's all it takes, because we all know cold calling and prospecting can be the hardest thing on the planet. And to your point, Ashleigh, at some point you got to go, maybe it's not the company they're rejecting. Maybe it's me they're saying no to. But when you find something that works, and don't stick to one thing, always A/B test and try a couple, 3 different things. And even in your approaches, in your email descriptors, in your videos, in the verbiage that you use, try something different. And when it clicks, roll with it. And to your point earlier, Ashleigh, we're all a tribe. When you see something that works, share it.
Yes.
Most salespeople believe that I am valuable because of what I know. I've always believed, as an enablement professional, you're invaluable because of what you share.
Yep.
That's how you build your brand. That's how you build a tribe. That's how you build trust and credibility, by saying, hey, I got this email template. I'm killing. My response rate has tripled. Here it is. Go put your name on it. And take the ego out of it.
Yep. And don't expect anything in return.
That's the big thing.
No,
don't expect that. That's key, is don't expect anything in return. It's put it out there. If people use it and it helps, great. If they don't, it's okay. Maybe it just works for me because I'm me.
I tell people all the time, I'm going to give you this template. You can use it and up level it, or use it as a beer coaster. It's your call. You can throw it away. But instantly, the first thing I want you to do is take my name off of it. And that's hard for salespeople. because everybody needs to know it was me. I'm in lights. How am I going to get the President's Club? Newsflash, you don't get the President's Club because of what you do. You get the President's Club because of what you're a part of in an entire team structure, or what you're doing to focus on your prospects or your customers. You're not there because you're so wonderful and you closed 8 million deals. You closed 8 million deals because you got people to trust and believe in you. Cut the ego. It's bullshit. It is complete bullshit out there right now. And if there's anything that really unnerves me, it's when people start saying how wonderful, quote unquote, I am in the I. I know the old adage of there's no I in team. Let's put that on the shelf. Let's go a lot deeper than that and peel some layers on this onion. It's not about you. They closed the deal because you built trustability, that you built trust, credibility, and showed them something of high value that's going to help them and their company. At the bottom line, they didn't buy because they love you. They're not here to make friends. They're here to make a profit. If you become a friend later, that's an upside. But don't fool yourself into believing that's why they bought from you. If that were the case, none of us would ever close a deal. And it's not because your process or your platform or your solution is so wonderful. Like I said, they bought because you showed them an experience that they could only have by partnering with you and your company. Bottom line, point blank. Anything else, you're feeding the ego.
Sell the sizzle, not the steak.
Not the steak. Look, we're in the midst of planning, like a lot of folks are, our sales kickoff. I work with marketing. What's the theme? How are we going to do this? And it's wonderful. We need to know that. I talked to my SVP of sales. You know what he said? Marketing cares about the napkin colors and the tablecloth. We care about what's on the plate.
Oh, I like that. Because I mean, marketing, the experience is
and
important.
Hold on, I got to say this, Ashleigh. That's not a knock on the folks from marketing listening.
No.
That is understanding your audience and then partnering with them. So then I came back to my SVP and sales and said, I respectfully disagree. Because if we go do this thing and we don't worry about the tablecloths, we don't worry about the backdrops and the experience, and it's completely janky and terrible, guess who looks bad? Not marketing. You do, Mr. SVP of sales. I do, Mr. VP of enablement. So it has to be, and I'll go back to what I said earlier, it has to be mutually equitable. It's not about fair. It's about how is this a win-win without expecting, to your point, Ryan, without expecting anything in return. I don't do things because I want accolades. I don't need another award. There's enough chunks of glass out in my garage to cover this entire house in glass. And that's not egotistically said. It's just what it is.
Because you used to put people through that backboard, right?
Yeah, a little this, a little that. I mean, there was a 42-inch vert at one time. I could touch the top of the square with both hands, but that was a long time ago and I'm an old dude now. But in all
now you're sticking to St. Andrews.
Yeah, and now don't do things for rewards. I had a CEO when I was at Marketo. Steve told me something. He said, look, Roderick, individual contributors vie for and win awards. Managers give those awards. Leaders don't care about awards. They care about the people that are winning them. Let that marinate for a second.
That's actually one of my favorite interview questions to ask, especially when I'm interviewing managers or leaders, is I ask them what's the highlight of their career. And if you say President's Club, you say a big deal, I don't know that you're ready for leadership. You start talking about how many people have been promoted, how you pulled this guy back from the brink and he's now your top performer, how you were able to get the whole team to hit this. If you live for your team, that's leadership. You want to talk about what key people at your company. There are people that I've had in my career where I've had those managers where I will bleed for you as a person because there's that personal connection, because I know you've got my back and I know they've got my back and I've got theirs.
Yeah. Can I answer that question?
Oh, please.
Two things. One, the thing that I'm the proudest of is watching the people on my team go from individual contributors to parallel with me now as VPs. And most will go, oh, that's because it's your leadership tree. No, it's because these people are actually better than me at what I do. And I take pride in that. The second thing I take pride in is the fact that all the way back to my Oracle days, And that was, Salesforce days, that was over a decade ago. Every single person from every team, with the exception of one, are all on my personal social media to this day. We still reach out and say happy birthday. We still check on the kids for graduations and all those things. Because when I build a team, I'm grooming a culture of learning, but I'm also building a family. Because we're going to spend more time together than you're going to spend with your spouses. So if you're a leader out there and your marker of success is how many people went to President's Club and what you did and how your teams did, and you hit 20,000% over quota, you're not a leader, you're a manager. If the first thing that comes out of your mouth is about your people, you're a servant leader.
I think that might be a pro tip. I tell people to start asking in interviews. If you're an IC, start asking your manager that question, because that'll tell you if you've got someone you want to, that's going to be that relationship with. Because I think that's what we all look for when we're hiring. It's so hard to find these things in interviews when you've got 30 minutes.
It is, but that's a telltale sign of what's important to that person, and also whether you're walking in under a manager or under a leader.
Yeah.
And no one wants to be managed, because last I checked, that term micromanagement has no positive connotation to it, unless it's changed in the last 20 minutes. I don't think so.
Nope.
No.
And I don't think really like salespeople are prepared for that type of leadership. I've seen experiences where they come in and they are used to, the heavy activity, all the kind of stress that comes with carrying quota. And then when it's like, hey, take a step back, breathe a little bit, like you need an afternoon, or hey, this time is for you and a one-on-one, what can I do to help you? It's like they look at you like a deer in headlights, like this has never happened before.
There's a generational thing there too, I think, because I've had this conversation with a few people where, Ryan, you and I are very similar in age, and we're kind of elder millennials, where when we were growing up, and I've had people talk about this, is kind of similar. We did the extracurriculars, we did the sports, we did these. People 5-10 years old didn't really do that. So when we were teenagers in our formative years, we were going from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. most days, even with weekends or hanging out with friends, but we were scheduled. Whereas people 5 years prior to us, school's out and they made their own fun. Yep. So you've got this weird thing happening now where you've got half of the sales force, which comes from this hyper directed, hyper specific, super segmented, hyper scheduled, usually controlled by somebody else, to all of a sudden being adults and having to run their own lives and set their own schedule. And it's like, wait, what? You're not going to tell me how to set up my day? What do I do? And it's really unsettling for them. That's one of the things that when I'm doing like management training, it's talking about generational management. It's like, okay, you don't want to stereotype people, but accept that people had different experiences growing up, and understanding that sometimes when someone's a little bit younger, you need to not micromanage, but give them those guardrails and have a conversation. Do you want specifics? But then to Roderick, to your point, it's then getting them thinking, okay, hey, I'll give you something to start with, but you got to start iterating on this. Take my name off it and start making it your own, and encouraging that gradual expectation, versus if you try and do that with someone who is a grizzly veteran, they're looking like, what are you talking about? I got my system. I'm going to go run my system. Bye.
There are three things that I'll say, and I'll start with this. That whole mentality is our fault. And I mean enablement. It is our fault. Whether you're sales training, your field enablement, sales enablement, it is our fault that. Matter of fact, again, I wrote a whole chapter on this, on how to integrate people into jobs at different levels. Let me start with this. SDRs are coming out of college. They've usually had maybe one job, they've maybe two that they've dabbled with, but never have they been stuck in a corporate environment by themselves, forced to learn how to swim in a pool where they don't know where the swim lanes are, they don't know where the sharks are, and they don't even know if there's a lifeguard. So how about this? When you're bringing in BDRs and SDRs and you're just coming in, what I recommend is treat it the same way that they did the last 4 or 6 years. They had a syllabus. They knew what they were going to do from freshman to sophomore to junior to senior year and beyond if you MBA'd. We should do the same thing with enablement when we bring you in. We've got what we call a guided learning path. You're going to do this first, and then this is phase 3, and this is phase 4. that has an enormous positive impact because the mind is already trained one way. Don't try and retrain that mind overnight. They're already trying to figure out, how do I fit into a corporate or an entrepreneurial environment? They're trying to figure out, how do I show that I'm an adult when I know I'm really not? And how do I make them think that I know more than I do? First of all, we don't expect you to know anything when you come in. We expect you to have a positive attitude and be open to learning new things, right? That's one. The second is never, ever, ever allow anyone else to drive your career. Not your parents, not your boss, not your CEO, not your significant other. Because no one has the vested interest in your career that you do, because they don't have to go to your job every day. And the third part, and I'm going to say this for our leaders out there, not our managers, but our leaders. I have two things that I do with my team. One, I call it off the grid, because I understand the complexities of my team. Off the grid says, I've got to go to the dentist. I'm going to be out for 2 hours. Okay, let the team and myself know you're off the grid so we can cover for you if anybody asks what's going on. Don't go take PTO for something personal. Take PTO to go have fun and enjoy the people that you're working with and working for, right? The next thing is, I start every single team meeting, every single one-on-one with the same 3-part question. Do you want me to listen? Do you want me to coach? Or do you want me to fix? Let me say that again. Do you want me to listen, coach, or fix? 2 reasons I say it. One, as leaders, we're natural fixers. It tells me what ears to put on. You may not need a fix. Sometimes it's, can you just let me say this and get it out of my head and see if it sounds crazy? Sometimes it's, I've never seen this before, so how have you done it? And sometimes it's, just tell me what to go do because I've tried everything and none of that shit worked, right? But most importantly, it tells that person on the other end of the conversation that this finite amount of time together in your one-on-one is all about you. You tell me what you need from me. That's leadership. That's not managing.
If I may, that's also a really good relationship tip. Just take out the coach in the middle.
Take the coach out, because I'll tell you why. I always say this. Don't try
one.
this with your significant other with the coach part.
No.
Good tip for me. I just recently got married.
Don't try that with your significant other, and take coach out when you're talking to your kids. But professionally, I've found that that is probably the one thing that has changed me and made me a better leader over the years. And I'm not going to pretend like I've always been a great leader. I'm not. I don't even know that I'm great now. I think I'm pretty good. But I think that's the biggest piece that helped me transition from being a manager to becoming a leader. Again.
Dang, so I don't get to be like my dad and just say,
no, you do not.
It.
That's the main reason that I came up with that question. I grew up with a military dad. No.
Same.
So
Dude,
you feel
they're
me?
rough, man. It was like, you do it right one time, and if I have to ask you to do it again, it's the last time I'm gonna have to ask you to do it again.
It's not gonna be a happy outcome.
And there wasn't any coaching. It was no coaching.
No. But think about what that does though for the employee. Think about what that does for the IC. And I'm not just talking about the newbies and the BDRs. I'm talking about the grizzly folks too, because it gives them a chance to say, without having to say, I don't know everything. I haven't seen it all. You have more experience than I do. Help me to understand how to be a better me. I said it earlier and I'll say it again. This is a part of that transition of becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable. You have to be comfortable with saying 3 words. I don't know. Those to me are the 3 most powerful words on the planet behind I love you, for 2 reasons. One, it says, I don't claim to know everything. And secondly, it says, I'm coachable and teachable. Help me, oh wise one.
I think a third point is like the vulnerability that it puts yourself in. That,
especially with the legacy sellers, those old grizzly folks.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to say, I don't know how to do this. Can you help me? They'll be like, well, I tried these 6 things. I got nothing else. That's them saying, what else is there that works? Because I haven't figured it out yet.
It's speaking their language. And I think you hit something earlier I want to call back because I think it's so important, especially if we look at the changing face of sales. If we look at sales, especially the changing face of sales, which, as we mentioned, like obviously Other Side of Sales is on a mission to make B2B sales culture truly inclusive so everyone can thrive. And that means we have to have diversity of thought, diversity of experiences, diversity of backgrounds, all of that stuff. And you hit on something that if you haven't heard our interview with Joe Parento, please go listen to it because I'm going to reference something he said there. Roderick, you and Joe would get along so well, but he talked about his experience in the military and how when you enter the military, they assume you have no confidence and no competence. Yeah. And that's why they do boot camp the way they do, is to build your confidence and build your competence quickly, but they come in assuming you have nothing. And I think that's one of the most common mistakes. And I mean, I'm kind of shooting my business in the foot because this is what companies pay me to do, is come in and design.
No, but you're right. With competence comes confidence, right?
Exactly. But people come in and they want SDRs who have college degrees and understand consulting sales or understand cybersecurity. It's like, no, start with basics. Start with somebody who knows nothing and give them that confidence through competence and a strong training. You can do a lot more with just a couple weeks of dedicated, well-designed training than you can waiting for 6 months for someone who happens to have that unicorn status of experience come to get you.
Absolutely.
And it makes it so much easier to get a diverse team. Like you mentioned, most BDRs have college degrees. I'm a very firm believer that college degrees are a great, nice to have, but that's not a road that a lot of people have open to them.
Thank you.
And that should not shut them off from a sales career. It's ridiculous.
Thank you so much, because a degree says that you are intelligent enough to learn how to regurgitate facts. It does not say that you are competent, nor are you confident.
And it says you came from an economic background that could afford it.
I was about to hit that. And it also said that you came from a place where economically you could afford it. Now you're on a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and that's diversity and inclusion. And diversity, equity, and inclusion. Let's make sure those. Let me define those. Diversity is about being able to be invited to the table. Equity is being able to order anything you want on the menu. Inclusion is about everybody coming and sitting down and eating with you in the same booth. That's not always the case. There are a lot of companies that want to talk about diversity and inclusion, but how about we change the narrative on that? Instead of trying to do the right thing, how about we start focusing on doing the thing right?
Yes.
Get diversity across the board in ethnicity, in gender, in sexual orientation. Because if you've got everyone that walks, talks, thinks like, and has the same haircut, what you lose is diversity of thought. And your company will eventually die because you'll have no new ideas, no new thoughts, because everyone went to the same 4 schools. Everyone has the same haircut. Everyone has the same life experience. Everyone has the same economic advantages and backgrounds. But when you start sprinkling in a mix of all of these things, I'm from the South, so I'll give a Southern analogy. You're building a gumbo, and it takes all of these different seasonings. And if you leave one out, and if you've got a trained Southern palate, you know something's missing. I can't quite put my finger on it, but something's missing. The same thing happens in a corporate or an entrepreneurial startup environment. If you don't have all the mix of seasonings, something's missing and you're not going to get to that right level. And you'll wonder why you constantly have turnover. I'm in Silicon Valley, been here 25 years. We moved from 1% to 2% in diversity, and they're ready to throw a party. How about if we step back away from those crazy vanity stats and say, what's that seasoning that we're missing? Because our gumbo is missing something. It's just not quite right yet. And let's go do that and get it together. And a lot of times, I'll be honest, Ryan, it's people that look like you and me, right? And that's why I absolutely love Sales for the Culture, because we are focused on ensuring that we can create opportunities for people of color that the doors don't open. I've been blessed to sit in a position where I'm literally having this conversation with HR, our SVP of sales, and our HR business partner, and our head of recruiting next week. And it goes like this. I've been here 7 months. Every day I see a new person. We're in expansive growth mode. I have never seen one yet that looks like me. I don't want to know why. I want to know how we change it. And look, I got the answer. It wasn't intentional. And my response was, it wasn't unintentional. So let's make some changes. Again, let's get away from the way we've always done things. Let's break some glass and let's go get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And sometimes that means the person that sits next to me, the person that's on my team, the person that I report to, the person that's smarter than me that's on my team as an IC doesn't look like me. We get to that, and now we're starting to get towards mutually equitable. Because if we don't build down here in the ICs, when you get up here, who of you were moved up, right? Who have you promoted? Then what you do is you have this same cycle over and over. It's time to break that cycle. Again, a true leader says, I don't care if you're the garbage man or you're the VP. My mom used to ask me all the time, she's like, "Dad, son, do you ever know when your CEO is on vacation?" Like, I have no idea. Yeah, she goes, "But what happens if the garbage man or the plumber doesn't come for a week?" Now we call these people essential workers, right? But in all actuality, who's making the difference? Sure, strategically up here sets the bar, but never forget that what you're doing is grooming these people to one day sit in those seats. And I go back to a statement I made earlier. What's important to my manager is imperative to me. If I see no one on my team that's diverse and that's what my manager hired, guess what? When I become a manager, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go, and we'll hide behind, well, we take referrals. So what you're saying is in referrals, you have absolutely no one that has friends of color? That's another conversation we need to have then.
I think it's, oh, go ahead, Ashleigh.
I was gonna say you're there's like 50 different things there I want to unpack. But two things I want to call out. One is I've been hearing this more and more, and I love adding it on when we talk about the DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion discussion. Another word I've heard being tagged on lately that I really appreciate is belonging.
Belonging.
Because that is such a powerful thing, because when DEI is present, then belonging is possible. And that's the feeling of being able to bring your full self to the environment that you're in. And that's when you really get performance out of people. But it really, to me, the diversity conversation, I feel like it keeps coming back to that same idea of you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It is easy and comfortable to be in a room with people who look like you.
And think like you. And talk like you.
That's, again, it's short-term success for long-term failure. And at the same time, the thing that I think, especially in sales, a lot of people forget, our buyers don't look like us.
Bingo.
I was told literally my first day in sales, and I try to be very aware of my own unconscious biases and the privileges that I have as a white woman who was raised in the United States. My first day in sales, I was told, we're putting you in this patch because you're a girl and you talk fast, and we think the CIOs in that region are going to be a little thrown by you. So you'll probably have a better shot of getting them to listen. So in one side, it's like, okay, I'm really glad to have this job, and cool, I've got an edge because I'm different. And at the same time, I'm being told there's no one else who's going to do this who looks like you. So you better figure this out. And the fact of the matter is they were right. So there was this very weird mix to kind of start my career with. And it was from a place of well-meaning, but we keep, if people forget what an advantage it can be to be different if you lean into it. So being able to be a girl who could call CIOs and talk 10 gigabit Ethernet switches, back in 2011 or whatever it was, that was unusual. That got people's attention.
Absolutely.
And that really helped my career because I got known for being someone who could do deeply technical things despite looking the way I do. At the same time, I'm also looking back now and going, oh, the way they did that just sent the message to me that I was strange and I was weird and I was gonna have to figure it out, and I was on my own. And that made me stronger, but there was no need for it. And I never got the sense that I belonged in that company or several subsequent companies. But it's this idea of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. If you can be comfortable being challenged, hearing those different points of views, that does nothing but build your business and make you more not acceptable, more welcoming to all the different clients. It does nothing but expand your opportunity in the market. But it's so easy to just stick with what's familiar. And we see company after company that just makes the same mistakes again and again and again. And it's part of the reason why this podcast exists, because I'll be honest, I got really sick of looking at podcasts and it's like white guy, white guy, white guy, white guy, white guy, white guy. Oh, look, there's one that's either a woman or a person of color, white guy, white guy. It's like, no, that's not how I sell. That's not how I do business. That's not how many of the other people I know who do business. And I cannot imagine the journey that you've been on, Roderick, because I've only been doing this for a little over a decade. I cannot imagine what this was like when you started and and you're right. Silicon Valley's gone from 1% to 2% and everyone's throwing a party. It's like, okay, yes, we can celebrate progress. We are not there yet. I mean, we did the state of sales survey last year, said that 84% of sales professionals have experienced or witnessed discrimination or harassment on the job. That's insane.
But Ashleigh, the progress, nobody wants to hear your Debbie Downer trying to bring them down. We're making progress. It takes time. It takes time.
It does.
It's a big ship to turn around.
I'm so tired of hearing those excuses too. It's just like,
it's like, I'm not saying we haven't made progress, but this is the thing. And I hear this all the time, especially Roderick, I'm sure you hear it too with leadership positions. It's like, oh, do you want us to fire half of our VPs and hire women? No, I want you to train women so that when those jobs open up, you actually have an equal distribution of candidates to backfill them.
Yep.
I want you to actually make an effort. I want you to actually handicap your job descriptions and handicap your performances to allocate for the fact that I'm fully aware if I'm up for a job and I'm up against a woman of color and we've got the exact same qualifications, hire the woman of color because she has absolutely done more than I have just because of the handicap. Like we need to be talking and thinking like this until society fixes it. And then we've got the whole other issue we've got with, I now live in Europe, but the United States and the way we handle generational wealth and everything else when it comes to race relations in the United States. We've got stuff, but these problems are not going to be solved by pretending that small steps are enough or pretending that these things don't happen. And like, I get really sick of this discussion. Like you can't talk politics in the workplace. Work is political. The companies you work for are political.
Yeah, I said, they're here to make a profit, not friends. I'm glad that you're on this topic because it's, again, near and dear to my heart. I get people all the time that say, look, I want to be an ally. I want to do things differently and sincerely want to. I've had leaders come to me and say that. And I say, you know, there are two different things that can happen. And this is going to take a little while. So I want to be clear. From a corporate perspective, think about your equity and hiring professionals. Look at your middle managers, your executives, your senior exec, and your board and diversify. Also, think about the impression that you're making when someone comes to your website. If there's no one that looks like me, it instantly says, you don't want me there because you intentionally put out what you want your brand to be. The next is think about inclusive mentorship as a company. Expand your recruiting internships, hire across things like HBCUs instead of going to the traditional schools over and over. Thirdly, as a company, if it's important to you, educate against racism, institute implicit bias training. The next is collaborate with the community you live in. To your point, that's where your buyers are. They all look differently. Build a diverse pipeline of future leaders, to your point, Ashleigh, that are going to move into those seats and be prepared, not just there because we need quota.
Exactly.
Also, think about your marketing practices. Ensure representation in all of your marketing assets. If your company PowerPoints, if the things you put out aren't diverse, neither is your company, no matter what your stats say. Next is think about entrepreneurial investments in minority and women-owned businesses that could partner with you or bring a component that fits you. Now that's a corporate. Let me give you what I think you can do if you're an individual, because I get this all the time. Even my wife's Irish Italian. They come to me all the time and say, I want to do things, but I don't even know where to start. Let me help you. First of all, own your own biases and do what you can to change it individually before you go out and try and fix things. Ask questions. Next, speak up against racism in closed meetings.
Yes.
Right? You've got to be that person that says, that's not cool. I'm here. I'm not okay. And never forget, you don't know what people have at home that you're talking about just because they don't look like that individual or speak with that accent. The next is hold your, to your point politically, hold your elected officials accountable for representing all, in caps, bold flashing, all of their constituents. Then be an advocate for change in actions, not just words. A lot of people want to talk about shit, but don't want to go out and do anything. Then support people and organizations financially that drive change. Oh, they're doing a great thing. They say, can you help us? Yeah, well, I can't donate, but hey, I think you guys are doing something. That doesn't help. Provide more opportunities within your area of expertise. I mentor a ton. Ryan will tell you, I'll jump on a call and give up time anytime that I can, if it's of high value to that person and it's mutually equitable. We need more people doing that. I didn't get here by accident. You cannot break the glass ceiling by yourself. I don't care how strong you are, how big your brand is. There has to be someone on the other side that reaches down and pulls you up. Be that person. Next, exercise your voice and your vote. You think it doesn't matter? You could not be further from the truth. Now, then focus on long-term change, not just short-term initiatives. It's good for spots, But what does that do in the long term? And is this a step closer to getting towards that end goal? Next, listen, learn, then lead so you can empower others by your examples. You cannot be a theorist if you're not a practitioner. If you're a practitioner, then theorists bug the hell out of you. Finally, prepare the next generation to carry that torch of injustice that's been in place forever. I know that change is not going to happen on wide scale in my lifetime, but I'm preparing my 23 and my 32-year-old and all of their friends that I am dad to, pops to, mentor to take this torch to that next level with the next generation. I've talked to my parents, I've talked to my grandparents about injustices that would bring tears to all of our eyes. And then I look at where I am. And I also look at how far we've gone, yet how far we still have to go. And my sincere prayer and hope is that that next generation will take it to the next level. And I say that in all sincerity with this now, and I'll end here. We can't hope it's gonna work. Ryan, you know where I'm about to go. You can't hope it's gonna work. You can't hope you've got the right people in place. You can't hope that your elected officials and or the executives in your company have the same moral standards and ethics as you. Why? It's simple. Hope is not a strategy.
That's so powerful. Yeah, just where was a mic drop or something, because I know Ryan's waving to turn the lights back on in his room, but congrats, you actually got me stuttering. It's so true. And I'll put one thing in there just to double down on, because it's something that's very near and dear to my heart. And anyone who listens to the show knows this. As salespeople, we have a very specific set of skills. And even everything we talked about today in terms of building relationships and building connections, politics is still a local game. Please, I don't care which party you're involved with. I don't care what your political leanings. Please reach out to your local political party of choice and volunteer.
Your voice matters.
Well, your voice matters, but you have an incredible skill set to help get other people involved and get other people to vote. Work with phone banking. Oh my gosh. I did some work with the Democratic Party. Spoiler, no one was surprised. The scripts they're using, the tactics they're using do not reflect anything that we know in this community works every day.
It's Y2K.
It's pre-Y2K. It's so bad, it's ridiculous. There is a need for people like us for an hour or two a week to make huge impacts on local elections. Huge impacts. And your state attorneys general, your sheriffs, your local officials have a huge impact on your life, but those elections and those candidates get virtually no scrutiny in the wake of the larger national debates. Please get involved, even if it's a little bit. It is a quick way to make a lasting impact. You want to talk about high value, high equity, mutually beneficial? That is a very easy way, if you do not have cash for whatever reason or anything else, to make a big impact quickly. I was very lucky and very proud last year that I was given the opportunity to help train callers. And just by doing, I think 6 or 7 trainings, I think we said we got about 150 callers that were doing a total of like 15,000 hours over the course of the election for progressive candidates in the last election. I don't know what the impact of that was, but that's one of the things I could look back on election night when we didn't know what was going to happen and say, at least I laid it all out in the field and it kept me sane. And this is something that every salesperson can do on either side. And again, my emphasis is not to go one doctrine or the other. It's just get involved, because there's such a need for people like us out there that we just forget about it. It's way too easy.
And I think a huge point that you both are kind of hitting on is the importance of political maturity. We don't have all the answers to every problem that society faces, but to be well informed and knowledgeable and come from a place of not, I guess, to not be ignorant to a lot of the challenges that Americans face that look different from you, talk different from you, et cetera. It's just huge to, I feel like, my own well-being. It's had an impact on that. It's helped me like reach across different divides to hear people out and make them feel listened. So then hopefully they'll listen to my kind of point of view, and we can find some mutual understanding and bridge some of this divide that's come up with whether it's, misinformation campaigns, whether it's people that are self-serving and try to, act like they're care about the common man or the common woman. There's just challenges around all of that, and turning off the talking heads in political media and actually like picking up a newspaper or a book that's actually like fact checked and they've done like extensive research on topics can be enlightening and can help you kind of understand maybe where somebody's coming from with their argument. So then you're not so heels dug in the sand, head, buried, pounding the table, rah, rah, rah.
I take it a step further. If you consider yourself an ally and you have not read an anti-racism book, or even just how not to be an anti-racist or how not to be a racist, white supremacy, there's literally, you can Google anti-racism books. If you haven't read at least one book a year on these topics, I question if you're really doing right by your team.
I'll double tap on this, and I believe that we are far more alike than we are different.
Yep.
And if we allow division to push us apart, then ugliness wins. I grew up in the South, as I said, in Texas, Louisiana. Now I live in California. And I've had the honor and privilege of traveling the world. And I truly believe that the entire globe is a very, very small neighborhood. And we all have far more in common if we would take just an opportunity to learn something different about culture, about background, about history, and really open your mind. You'll learn so much more. And then it becomes beyond just a diversity conversation, it becomes a global citizen conversation. Because we have the same problems going on in every part of the world.
Yep.
We all talk about we want to make change. It's a big ship, as we said before. It's not going to turn around overnight, and it probably won't happen in my lifetime. But if we don't take the same analogy of how cliffs are created, and that is the ocean hits that wave, the ocean wave hits that rock a number of times, and it starts to chisel away, and suddenly crumbling starts, and then suddenly cove starts, and before you know it, you've got a cave. We've got to be that wave that continually hits that wall of ugliness to start carving away and breaking away at it, one wave at a time, collectively.
That's profound. I mean, I couldn't have said any better. So I don't have anything to add to that. Of course, Roger.
And on that note, I think I'm going to do a horrible hard pivot, because this has been brilliant. And I do not envy our team who's going to have to pick some clips for this for social, because honestly, if you're seeing, if you should listen to this whole thing, there's a lot in here. But we need to wrap this up, and we're going to end this episode the way we end every episode, with our lightning round questions. So Ryan, why don't you kick this off?
Happy to do so. And I'm excited to hear some of these answers. So
I know.
Roderick, what's your morning routine, brother?
It starts out quite simple. Prayer, meditation, and then I have a board up here in front of me, and it's segmented into 3 pieces. What are my priorities for the week? What are my long-term? And what are all of the priorities, no more than 5, that I'm going to do today before I turn my laptop off? And I do that before I look at my email. Otherwise, it's firefighting instead of fire prevention.
I like that. I might steal that.
Yeah.
Pick one person who's had a significant impact on your career.
My mom, quite frankly. I wouldn't be who I am or what I am without them. And in regards to mentors, if I say one name, I am remiss. If you look at my book, it's literally my dedication to people to thank for my book. It's 2 pages long. And I still realize I left some people out. So I will not call out a name other than my mom and my wife. Those 2 have driven me.
That's awesome. What's your pump up song that you go to?
Ooh, man. It depends on the day, but it's always gonna be some hard old school, probably gangster hip hop, just to wake me up, or it's gonna be some Jay-Z, or it's gonna be some T.I.
Okay.
So it's like
Any
pick one
specific?
pick one song, yeah.
Ooh, man, that is a hard one. Okay. Um, God, that is so hard.
No
Because
shame. I listened to.
no, it's not even about shame. It's just I don't have one go-to. I have a playlist that will get me hyped and get me going. So I truly don't have one. Maybe it's dirt off your shoulders.
Okay.
To remind
Coming
myself.
soon to the other side of sales Spotify pump up playlist.
There it is. There it is.
All right. What's one thing you wish you'd learned earlier?
The thing I wish I would have learned earlier is simple. That sometimes I'm sorry is not enough. Once something comes out of your mouth, you can't take it back.
Mm.
So think about everything you say before it comes out. And remember, it's about people. It's not about titles or platforms or companies or logos. It's about people.
What books have had the biggest impact on your career?
Oh, let's see. Anita Nielsen's Beat the Bots, Todd Capone's Transparency Sale, Jeff Davis's, what is it? God, my mind just went nuts. Better Together. And then I would say that there's another one that I'm reading now, actually, by Donna Weber called Onboarding Matters. And there's such a double entendre there. And she hits on all sides of it.
Love it. All
That's
right.
awesome. I have to check that one out.
Yeah. All right. What's one way someone could have been a better ally to you?
Ask questions instead of assumes. Don't judge the book by its cover. I'm a guy that grew up in the projects, that was blessed enough to be able to have an amazing fairy tale life. Don't assume. Never, ever assume.
It's huge. What's one way you're working to be a better ally for others?
Mentorship of people that look like me and don't look like me. And then bringing them together at the same table to say, I've talked to you separately. Now, why don't you ask each other the questions that you've both asked me separately?
I love that.
I do too.
All right. Last but not least, what's your guilty pleasure at the end of a long day?
Grey Goose and pineapple. And I have a bocce ball court in my backyard. So the relaxation comes there. And I said, I'm from Texas, barbecuing. From brisket to ribs to steak to chops. It's the process of watching that meat.
By the way,
I was wondering what that was. So that for those
I saw
listening,
that back there.
So for those listening on the
Brian and I have
podcast,
this conversation all the time.
You
notice which one of us are insecure because they brought up which barbecue was better than the other. I just said broadly barbecue. I didn't say Texas barbecue. Ryan had to say KC is better than Texas. It shows that they're still trying to catch up with us and he feels left behind. So he's trying to get allies behind him to say KC has better barbecue. Ryan,
but you heard how he said barbecue, but then he followed with "I'm from Texas."
So that's what we do. We barbecue.
I had to let him know.
I should have said I'm from Texas and we do real barbecue.
We might have to put a little poll out for the audience to see.
I'm all about it.
Who has better barbecue, Kansas City or Texas? Please let us
know.
Georgia
and Carolina in there too. Then
I don't know if we want to get that controversial. I mean, we've hit politics, we've hit race relations. I don't know if we want to get into the barbecue wars. I know enough about that to
start
just
a lot of divisiveness here.
Ryan, we're trying to pull people together, bro.
Right. Well, hey, I'll go ahead and pull people together by saying, eat Roderick's barbecue before you eat mine. His is much better than what I throw together. So I'm go ahead and give you that.
I love it. All right, Roderick, where can people find you, connect with you, learn more from you?
Social media. If you can't find me, you're not trying. I am on Instagram at Roderick_J_Associates. You can find me on LinkedIn, Roderick Jefferson. You can find me on Twitter at The Voice of Rod. Or you could go to Amazon and grab the new bestseller, Sales Enablement 3.0. If you want to know more about what enablement is, where it's going, all the things we've talked about today and some, and I'll give you a teaser. We're now incorporating IA and ML into sales enablement in a way that it's never been done before. But you got to get to the final chapter to figure out what that is.
I love it. We'll put the link to all of those in the show notes if you need them easily. Thank you, Roderick, so much for joining us. This has been delightful. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends, like, subscribe, leave a review on your podcast catcher of choice. And with that, thank you for listening to another episode of The Other Side of Sales, and we will see you next time.